Welcome to this presentation that is all about the art of breathing less. In the words of BKS Iyengar, the yogi's life is not measured by the number of his days, but the number of his breaths. I'd like to invite in the possibility that this quote is alluding to the fact that the quality and depth and pace of your breath is immediately impacting the quality and length of your life. And that perhaps not intuitively at first, that ideally we actually want fewer breaths, fewer yet conscious and high quality breaths to lengthen our life. And before we dive in, I want to name that talking about breath and specifically about how to retrain our breath in ways that might feel uncomfortable at first can be triggering. So let's take a few moments to settle into a position of comfort. So just notice the rhythm and quality of your breath in this moment. And without trying to change it, send it appreciation. Give yourself some space to feel some gratitude as you acknowledge your breath, your body. How hard your body, your nervous system works so hard every day. And just make note that at any point throughout this presentation, if you feel you have shifted out of your body or start noticing that you're activated, feeling a little anxious, well, first thing we can do is pause to acknowledge how amazing our nervous system is. It's trying to protect. And that's beautiful. And you're more than welcome, of course, to pause this recording at any point if you need to ground yourself or take a few moments to just be with your breath. And just remembering that practice is meant to be something we enjoy, as there's always something to work towards. And it's equally important to honor and appreciate and savor who and where you are right now. Trusting the intelligence of your body and your breath. You're welcome to stay here as long as you need to really feel grounded. An optimal breath is similar to an optimal and healthy nervous system in that what we want is flexibility and adaptability. This process of being able to move away from center, to experience the different paces, depths, and rhythms of breath and the nervous system, and then come back home to calm, balanced, and centered. Our amazing body is adaptive. And when we consistently experience stressors and the impact of chronic stress inside our body, we adapt. we find balance in what is actually imbalance. So this is quite amazing, something we can appreciate and be in awe of when we notice how adaptive our body is, while simultaneously recognizing that we may need to engage in some practice to recalibrate and bring our entire system back into its optimal balance. For the remainder of this presentation, I will guide you through the important key of understanding carbon dioxide tolerance. And I'll explain how carbon dioxide tolerance can keep you locked in a suboptimal and potentially damaging, yet reversible, learned pattern of breathing, along with how to practice opening, relaxing, and releasing your breath patterns so you can nourish yourself and guide yourself back home. To do this, we will talk about the Bohr effect and what that means for understanding cellular respiration. And then we'll move through what mild air hunger techniques can be used for retraining your unconscious breathing pattern, as well as being used as a technique to heighten your cognitive abilities in moments that you need a boost. So let's begin. So what is the Bohr effect? Well, it's named after Danish physiologist Christian Bohr, who in the early 1900s discovered that blood with the most carbon dioxide in it, which makes it more acidic, loosened oxygen from hemoglobin. So red blood cells contain a protein called hemoglobin, and it's the hemoglobin that picks up and carries oxygen from the lungs to the tissues. And what Christian Bohr discovered was that this carbon dioxide worked as kind of like a divorce lawyer. Right? As James Nestor says in the book Breath, carbon dioxide was a go-between to separate oxygen from its ties so it could be freed to land another mate. And this discovery explained why certain muscles used during exercise received more oxygen than lesser used muscles. They were producing more carbon dioxide, which attracted more oxygen. It was supply on demand at a molecular level. Carbon dioxide also has a profound dilating effect on blood vessels, opening these pathways so they could carry more oxygen-rich blood to hungry cells. Breathing less allowed animals to produce more energy more efficiently. Meanwhile, heavy or panicked breaths would purge carbon dioxide. Just a few moments of heavy breathing above metabolic needs could cause reduced blood flow to muscles, tissues, and organs. End quote. So breathing greater volumes of air actually equates to receiving less oxygen. You might have more than enough oxygen flowing around your body, in your blood. But if there's not an optimal or high enough level of carbon dioxide, then this oxygen remains stuck in the red blood cells and will not be delivered. So as carbon dioxide levels drop when we overbreathe, airways constrict and oxygen sticks to the blood cells, which means that this oxygen and the nitric oxide that also can help with opening things up and reducing inflammation, it's not being released. It's not being utilized where its nourishment is needed, and many adverse symptoms will result. So ultimately, we need to learn how to consciously breathe less so that we can get better at making use of the oxygen that is already available in our body. So how do we do this? Well, the key is breathing slower, making space for oxygen and carbon dioxide to exchange without expelling more carbon dioxide than necessary. As well, for most of us, we need to consciously practice to increase our tolerance to carbon dioxide by practicing mild air hunger techniques. As again, for many of us, due to chronic overbreathing from various stressors, our body has adapted to a lower level of carbon dioxide. An important part of understanding our cellular respiration or our breathing chemistry is noting these terms that you've already heard some of and that you'll continue to hear throughout this presentation. So beginning at the top of the list here, a neutral substance or solution is when it has a pH of 7.0. And then on the acidic spectrum, when a solution has a pH that's less than 7.0, it becomes acidic. Whereas if it's a higher pH than 7.0, it's moved into the alkaline. The human body aims to keep blood plasma within a pH of a 7.38 to 7.4, which means we want to be in a slightly alkaline state. And this is supported by how we are breathing, how we are eating, how we are moving, and the current state of our nervous system. The term acidosis is referring to an internal state when our carbon dioxide is at a level that is too high for the current baseline of the body. Now, this generally occurs from a chronic state of unconsciously aborting the exhale and a general low tolerance to carbon dioxide. So this would be for people who potentially spend a lot of time in hypoarousal, where they're breathing really slow and without a fluid rhythm, where the exhale just kind of dissipates and there might be these unconscious breath holding that's happening. And on the other side of the spectrum, we can create what's called alkalosis or respiratory alkalosis. Now, this can come about from a state of having too low of carbon dioxide, which is called hypocapnia, versus hypercapnia of too high of carbon dioxide. Hypocapnia leads to hypoxia, where there's not enough oxygen, and this creates a condition called respiratory alkalosis. Now, both acidosis and alkalosis are extreme states on either end of the spectrum, where you're going to have symptoms that can be far-reaching and expansive, that might even seem disconnected from how you're breathing, but of course it's connected because the mind-body is inseparable. Now, while we go into playing with techniques where we might be producing momentary states of acidosis or alkalosis, it's important to recognize that there's a difference when you are consciously stepping into a breath technique, a protocol, a state, versus a chronic falling back into a state that is keeping you in a place of disharmony and imbalance. So these states of acidosis and alkalosis by themselves are not terrible for you when they're used as positive stress exercises. And when you bookend these experiences with a calm, regulated nervous system, which we will play with more at the end of this presentation. When there is not enough carbon dioxide present in our blood, this is called hypocapnia. Hypocapnia leads to hypoxia, an oxygen deficit. And this leads to a condition called respiratory alkalosis. Dr. Peter Litchfield, referring to respiratory alkalosis, says, quote, "The basic outcomes of these changes in physiology are brain hypoxia, oxygen deficit, brain hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, and metabolic lactic acidosis in neurons, all of which can profoundly alter overall brain function. Besides unfortunate physiological outcomes like headaches, triggering of neurological syndromes, and ischemia, these outcomes can have immediate effects on attention, motivation, emotion, cognition, learning, memory, personality, performance, and consciousness." Examples of psychological changes from a downside perspective include emotional vulnerability, anxiety, anger, fear, panic, phobia, apprehension, worry, crying, low mood, dissociation, disorientation, dizziness, fainting, confusion, hallucinations, attention deficit, learning deficits, poor memory, brain fog, inability to think, low self-esteem, and undesirable shifts in personality. On the other hand, from a consciousness perspective, many of these negatives can also lay the groundwork for important positives. End quote. A natural question that arises after hearing the many and far-reaching adverse symptoms and effects of chronic overbreathing, why then would someone have what feels like a naturally fast breath? Well, as Peter Litchfield alluded to, that many of these negatives can lay the groundwork for some really important positives. When we frame our breathing patterns from the perspective of our body or parts of us trying to protect us, we then get access to gateways of healing, of turning towards these parts of us that are trying desperately to control and manage, to push away discomfort. And when we can meet them and relax into them and hold space by staying present to what we're feeling and guide ourselves with our wise understanding of what an optimal relaxed breath looks like, as well as how to begin navigating a nervous system change, we can repetitively teach our body that we are safe now, that it's okay to move towards what these parts of us and these breath patterns are trying to protect us from. And this frees up our system. Now, we know that cancer and disease thrives in anaerobic environments, environments that lack oxygen. And now we understand that lacking oxygen has more to do with carbon dioxide levels in general than simply oxygen levels. So why again would we be consistently breathing fast? Well, the continued respiratory alkalosis or hypocapnia, this too low of carbon dioxide, created by chronic overbreathing, well, this signals the kidneys to get to work on returning our pH to normal. Different systems in our body are now going to adapt to make sure that our internal environment is not toxic. So the kidneys act to buffer this rising acidity. And the kidneys are very slow to act. They take at least 8 hours and up to 1 week to make its full contribution to rebalancing the body after a significant pH change. This is an amazingly adaptive feature of our body's innate intelligence. Yet it also creates some challenges, as the path of least resistance now leads us away from resuming a slower and healthier ventilation rhythm. Because of this change signaled by the kidneys, it is common that prolonged overbreathing for more than 24 hours sensitizes the brain to continue overbreathing, even when the primary cause or trigger or stressor is removed. During prolonged overbreathing, histamine levels also increase, leading to a host of allergic reactions, including inflammation and constriction of the smaller airways. When you breathe heavily, oxygenation of your brain significantly decreases. This leads to fatigue, anxiety, and poor concentration, as well as more serious conditions like hypertension and heart disease. Having a high tolerance to carbon dioxide is akin to having a wide and expansive window of presence. Your carbon dioxide tolerance is impacted by what we just went through in the previous slide. Depending on how your body, specifically your kidneys, have worked to adapt to find a way to balance your pH in your blood because of the chronic overbreathing that is causing imbalance, this makes it so that our carbon dioxide tolerance starts to decrease. So that if we actually start to find calm and breathe slower, this now is signaled in the body as danger. And a quick impulsive signal is sent to speed up your breathing to release this carbon dioxide. Now, why this is really fascinating and important to understand is that if you've ever had that experience of being in a yoga class or being guided in any way to breathe at a rate of maybe 5 seconds in, 5 out, or 6 in, 6 out, or in general being told this is a calming technique and your experience of it is actually quite the opposite. Maybe it feels stressful or even induces panic or just feels really, really difficult to maintain. That's because your body has adapted to a lower level of carbon dioxide. And the good news is that when we know that, it changes our experience of these slower practices. If you can begin engaging in slower breathing and even further into mild air hunger techniques with this deep knowing that it's okay, that these feelings of mild air hunger are actually good for you and leading you towards retraining your breath pattern to be slower naturally, and the huge expansive impact that will have on every system of your body. It changes your experience of these techniques. So what we want is to increase our tolerance to carbon dioxide so that we can be more flexible. We can experience highs and lows, activation, deactivation, and not get stuck, or not find ourselves triggered and spiraling. We want to be able to move away from center and then come right back home to center without a massive amount of regulation and navigation needed. It's important to remember that your mind and body are inseparable. So even if there is an emotional reaction, something that feels really big and intense, and if it's sustained without being released, our physiology will shift to protect, to adapt. And this happens right in the structure of our brain. There are a few structures within the brain that are what hold on to the optimal rhythm of our breath. And this is impacted by our experiences. So the pre-Botzinger complex is extremely sensitive to the internal state of an organism. The rhythm of breath continually changes to accommodate posture, speech, movement, metabolic needs, and mood. The plasticity of the mechanisms involved in respiratory behavior is modulated in part by the pre-Botzinger complex. It is a rhythm-generating network, and its main relationship in the manifestation of breathing is through the control of the inhale. And then we have the reticular activating system, or the RAS. And this network plays a vital role in regulating arousal and the transitions between sleep and wakefulness. And it also acts like a net or a filter that catches incoming stimuli to organize it in priority and relevance to survival based on its saliency, like its intensity, how it grabs your attention, as well as belief, past experience, your current state, and your neuroception, picking up on danger and safety signals moment after moment. The RAS then, after organizing this stimulus, then sends the most salient information to the thalamus, which acts like a mailroom or a lead switchboard of the brain, distributing to further reaches of the brain for more complex processing. So within the RAS is where we find the respiratory central pattern generator, or the CPG. This is the area that controls the natural breath, the unmanipulated, unconscious breath when you're not paying attention to it. And it's working to maintain your programmed carbon dioxide baseline within the alveoli of the lungs, again, to keep your blood pH in a healthy range. A substantial component of the CPG plays a significant role in transforming the rhythm set by the pre-Botzinger complex into an appropriate pattern of motor activity to pump air and regulate airway resistance. This is to ensure that the systemic flow of blood has the carbon dioxide concentration that will maintain balance. So depending on how fast the bloom of information is pulsing through your RAS, the rhythm of your breath will be impacted, speeding up or slowing down depending on this internal metronome's pace. While your present moment natural breath is a tangible source for knowing your current nervous system state, it's also the entry point to consciously go inward and regulate what needs healing and reframing. Generally speaking, the quicker the metronome, the quicker the breath. And then the more consuming or loud the sense of self becomes. A narrow perspective and difficulty in staying open to the present moment. And then less space to reappraise and get curious about what we are thinking and feeling, rather than reacting and going along with the same old, same old. So ultimately, what we need to understand here is that a significant part of our breath rhythm is being modulated through these very sensitive structures in our brainstem. And it is impacting how we think, what we pay attention to, how we feel about ourselves, what we make things mean. It's all connected. So by slowing our breath down, and again, using practices that help our breath slow down when we're not even paying attention to it, this is going to significantly improve our mental health, our ability to see the bigger picture, to pause and recognize our thoughts instead of going along with our thoughts or feeling stuck or imprisoned to our thoughts. And then as well, this is also impacting our heart health. A slower breath is allowing a loose, flexible, pliable diaphragm, which is supporting our heart. And this is supporting our rhythm of brainwaves, right? It's all connected. It's all moving together. And if we keep focusing, coming back to this slower, calmer breath, the ripple effect of positive momentum is immense. By knowing and understanding the relationships between those areas of your brain and the rhythm of your breath, this illuminates the correlation between how you are breathing and your current perception and experience of self, others, and the world. As well, we can see that our breath patterns can get stuck when what we need and want is a flexible breath that appropriately matches the current needs of the body. So when you notice a limiting belief circulating in your mind, or a quick reaction of making meaning when you feel something uncomfortable, remember that we are creatures of habit, and just because something is familiar does not mean that it is true or helpful. Notice how you are breathing, and imagine how that rhythm is influencing your nervous system state and the bloom of stimuli flowing through your RAS, respiratory reticular activating system. Try slowing down your breath. Tune into a nourishing rhythm that feels good for you. Utilize pauses between breath consciously as a way to tune in deeper to what you are feeling and access still points of high concentration. A simple box breath structure is a great place to start. And as a reminder, if you are feeling anxious, a gentle pause at the top of your inhale, followed by a long, soothing exhale, will support you to get grounded. Or if you're more than anxious, closer to panic, a pause at the bottom of your exhale for several seconds will elevate carbon dioxide and nitric oxide levels, so that as you take the next inhale, you're reducing your chance of hyperventilation or the spiraling further into more activation. I also like to use a mantra for a few minutes. Anytime I feel I need a little more support in anchoring my attention to presence, like a lightning rod, gathering in scattered energy. Notice the physiological changes in your body as your breath begins to influence that bloom of stimuli. Begin to open up to the possibility that you can access a new perspective, choose a new thought, repeat a new belief while in this state of relaxation. It's also helpful to practice noticing throughout your day any moments that you find yourself unconsciously holding your breath, or when your breath pattern changes, and get curious about your neuroception in that moment. What might be causing signals of danger? And can you look for safety signals? Ultimately, something bumped you out of connection from being present with the intention of protection. So notice what that might be. Is there pain, or discomfort, or fear? A part of you that's frustrated, doesn't want what's right here, right now. And our practice is all about noticing these reactions and meeting them with a yes in our breath, without pushing them away or making them wrong, but just including our diverse human experience turning towards what is here now, and expressing with your breath a sentiment of inclusion, allowance, patience, compassion. And trust that in your loving presence, healing will occur on its own. So feel into your posture, spinal posture and oral posture. Remember that you know how to breathe. Guide your breath wisely while you allow yourself to be guided. While it is important to practice observing and self-regulating throughout our day, it's also important to carve out very specific moments in time where we practice and turn inwards a little bit more. So rather than just self-regulating, we're inviting in the possibility that we can retrain our respiratory pattern generator to breathe slower, to increase our tolerance to carbon dioxide, and access deeper states of calm and healing. Now, before we move into a guided experience of these mild air hunger techniques, it's important to remember that it's not just about the practice, it's about what we do right before and after the practice. Ensuring that we are creating space to really feel what's here now, rather than just moving into manipulating our breath. We want to bookend the experience by relaxing in connection with how your body wants to breathe. So keep this in mind as you build this practice into your day. Bookend it with listening and allowing your breath to move unhindered, unmanipulated. Let's begin with this technique that is not meant for retraining your breath pattern. It's simply a way to get a good idea as to where your current carbon dioxide tolerance levels are. This is something I would suggest you do in the morning, within the first few minutes of waking up, or within a few moments of sitting down to begin a breath practice. And then keep track of it, just taking note of how this number might change after a week or two and more of these breathing less practices. Now, the length of your controlled pause at the bottom of your exhale corresponds to your current breathing volume baseline, or your current tolerance to carbon dioxide. The longer your controlled pause, the higher your tolerance to carbon dioxide, and the better oxygenated your body will be. An interesting correlation is that the longer your controlled pause, the less of a reaction you will experience to triggers. It's important to not strain or hold your breath in this practice, waiting until you reach extreme air hunger. We just want to sustain the breath hold until you feel a noticeable urge to breathe. Perhaps that might come with a little spasm in your diaphragm. And then stop your timer as you breathe in slowly, with the intention of showing your body, even after that breath hold, you are safe, you are present, and you can be with that slight tension that arose. From there, you return to soft and smooth breathing, Also note that if you gasped for air or your breath does not return back to normal, to an easeful rhythm within a couple of breaths after the breath hold, then you held for too long, and your number will not be an accurate picture of your tolerance. So be honest with yourself and patient. I know it can be a bit disheartening if you do this and your number is lower than 20 seconds, or you had the assumption that it would be a certain way and it's not. I definitely experienced that the first few times I engaged in this practice. But what's great is that if the number is below 20, you're going to notice a significant increase within the first week of doing mild air hunger techniques. So it's quite rewarding. And the closer your number is to 30 seconds, the slower the improvement will be. Okay, so there's a benefit to whatever number that you land on. So I'll guide you through this right here so that you can get an idea of where your current carbon dioxide baseline is. BOLT stands for blood oxygen level test. And we begin by settling into the position you're in and allowing a few natural, nourishing breaths. Just guiding yourself to feel relaxed, grounded. And keeping in mind that doing this over the next several days will give you a better picture of your current carbon dioxide tolerance. Just allow this one to be one number that you can divide, find the median after several of these experiences. So ideally we want to do this with a timer. So if you have your phone nearby, or you could even just take note of the time counting down on this presentation, or you could just count in your mind. So soon, the next few breaths, but not quite yet, what I'll do is I'll invite you to allow the bottom of the exhale to just relax. And rather than breathing in, press start on your timer or take note of the time or count and hold your breath with empty lungs. Relaxing in the emptiness and waiting for the impulse to breathe. When you feel ready, a slow, gentle inhale, that relaxed, soothing exhale. Make note of the time, the bottom of your exhale, and then hold. And just relax in the emptiness. Even noticing those first few urges to breathe, and if you really just notice them and relax into them, they often, or at least eventually, won't continue building right away. Being mindful that you're not forcing your way through into extreme air hunger. You're just waiting for that noticeable urge to breathe. And as soon as you take that inhale, make note of the time or press stop on your timer. And then breathe slowly, consciously. Take a few moments to really be with your body and breath, sending that signal again, like it's okay. It's okay to feel this. And then just take note of the time of that breath hold. Write it down somewhere. And I know sometimes doing this exercise, especially after moving through content that may have activated your system a little bit, or you'll just find at different times of day your carbon dioxide tolerance changes. So again, it's not written in stone, it's just one number. And now your challenge or your invitation is to try this several times. Notice how the number changes, and notice how it changes over time as you engage in the practices that we'll step into soon. So before we begin a practice, it's important to discern the difference between these two forms of mild air hunger practice. They're very similar, but what makes it different is that if we want to simply heighten cognition, improve our ability to learn or remember, or just get ourselves into that very energized, focused, not hyperarousal, but activated, energized. We want to get into that kind of state. We can use mild air hunger techniques in intervals, where we would choose a technique. Well, we could actually do mild air hunger or conscious overbreathing. So both of them are positive stress exercises. And if we use them for these bouts of 3 to 5 minutes, and then a minute to breathe naturally and normally to feel ourselves come back down to calm, and then again, overbreathing or underbreathing consciously for another 3 to 5 minutes, and then again, back down to calm, regulated, slow, soft breathing. Repeat that 3 to 6 times, and you have energized your system to a place of heightened cognition. Now, what we are going to practice for the rest of this presentation is how we increase our tolerance to carbon dioxide long term. This is about resetting your respiratory pattern generator, the area in your brainstem, that is sending the impulse to your diaphragm to breathe based on carbon dioxide and pH in your blood. So when we sustain mild air hunger techniques for 7 to 12 minutes continuously, this is what sends the signal to your brainstem that says, oh, okay, carbon dioxide is actually okay. And the baseline gets bumped up a little bit every time you sustain that practice. So that's what we're going to get into at this point. Now, before we dive in, one more thing is to understand that another aspect of this is that we're actually mimicking high altitude training when we're using mild air hunger techniques. When we're at a higher altitude, oxygen levels drop, and our body, to acclimate to this, will produce more red blood cells so that it can carry more oxygen throughout the body. And as we are engaging in mild air hunger techniques, that's exactly what we're doing. We're reducing oxygen levels over time, and that is signaling the body to optimize its system and create more red blood cells. So over time, this is going to have a huge positive impact on every system in your body. Let's practice. Begin by finding a comfortable seated or laying down position. This practice we are engaging in is steered towards increasing your tolerance to carbon dioxide. So we will sustain this practice for several minutes, and I will slowly move you through further steps. Yet keep in mind that this is really a practice from the inside out. And it's important that you are perceiving your interoception, noticing what you're feeling and staying within your window of tolerance as much as possible. Now, as you settle into your position, some other things to pay attention to is that there are various ways that your body might try to dispel carbon dioxide as it slowly begins to increase within your system. And these ways are through chronic yawning, sighing, sniffing, So these are really simple ways that your body might try to shift your breath chemistry. And noting the difference between, if you're tired or you're shifting states, and so there's a yawn versus a pattern of yawning. And same with sighing. Sighing can be a really wonderful way that your body is signifying and supporting itself to shift states. Yet if there is a chronic pattern of sighing, it's something different. And as well with sniffing. Okay, so just noticing these things, if they are consistent in your practice or if they just happen once in a while. And important to recognize that it's not something to shame or judge, but just something to be curious about, to turn towards, to notice, to even appreciate how strong your system is in trying to keep you balanced within your current baseline. So if you do notice these things, a simple thing you can do is, as soon as it happens, the yawn or the sigh or the sniff, is really make sure that on the next exhale, you pause, you hold your breath. Doing so with this willingness and presence and softness, so that you're guiding your body breath by breath to recognize that it's okay, it's safe, and we can allow that carbon dioxide to slowly increase. Now, as you continue to settle in the position you've chosen for yourself, just notice your current breath rhythm. Allowing your back to be supported, your body to be held, so you can let go of any muscle engagement that's not needed right now. And notice how that allows your belly to expand as you inhale and to relax more fully as you exhale. And we want to ensure that we're really creating space for this breath. So whether you are on your back or seated, imagine there's a piece of string gently holding you up or lengthening your spine from the back of your head. Just allowing your exhale to soften as you let go a little more. And now place one hand on your chest and one hand just above your navel. And just notice the movement of your body as you breathe. And now notice what happens as you gently exert a little bit of pressure with your hands on your abdomen and chest as you inhale, creating a subtle resistance to your breath. And know that if you prefer to have your hands wrapped around your low ribs, that's a great option here as well. So that you're breathing against your hands. And concentrate one pointed focus on making the size of each breath a little smaller. As if the wave of your breath is rising a little slower, not as high, and just taking a little bit longer. And with each breath, take in less air than you would like to. Make the in-breath smaller and shorter. You are doing this exercise correctly when you slow down and reduce your breathing sufficiently to create a tolerable need for air. This need for air signifies an accumulation of arterial carbon dioxide, the goal of which is to reset your respiratory center's tolerance to this gas. Every exhale, breathe out with this full relaxation. allowing the natural elasticity of your lungs and diaphragm to play their role. Like a balloon slowly and gently deflating of its own accord. And as your in-breath becomes smaller and your out-breath remains relaxed, the visible movement of your breath will be reduced. It may be supportive to count the rhythm of your breath and gradually count slower, breathing in slow motion, keeping the inhale shorter than the exhale, meeting this tolerable air hunger, and remain there for another couple of minutes. Fully present in this experience. Notice the subtle sensations. How relaxed can you be on every exhale? Meet that inhale with slight compression on your body to support this slow motion, short inhale. Just one more minute. Notice how you can occasionally allow that inhale to perhaps be a little longer or deeper when you need to expand a little bit more. Yet there could also be an inhale that's a little shorter than the last. As you consciously navigate to remain within your window of tolerance, staying present, your window of presence. At the end of your next exhale, release any manipulation of your breath and just breathe. Let your body breathe. Notice what it feels like to let go of these restraints on your breath and to breathe freely. Perhaps a little bit of movement might feel nice here as well. Wiggling or stretching, making any sounds that might feel nourishing and welcomed. So that's step one. And that's where you will remain until that feels familiar and comfortable. So you can stay with that technique if you notice that was quite challenging, was really uncomfortable, anything that gives you the signal that you need to continue practicing that before moving forward. You can just press pause here. Maybe go back to the previous exercise and stay there until you're ready to take this a step further. So step 2 of this process, we change things a little bit. So again, seated or laying on the ground with your hands on your belly or a sandbag on your belly. Begin by sustaining a balanced rhythm of breath for about 20 seconds here. Guiding your breath to be soft and light, feeling it in your low belly, low back, low ribs. And then at the end of your next exhale, you're going to hold your breath and relax in the emptiness and just wait, feeling for that build up of mild air hunger, where it starts to feel a little bit uncomfortable, not extreme. And when that mild air hunger feeling sets in, you're then going to allow 3 to 6 small sips of air, like a 1 second inhale, a 1 second exhale. Doing that 3 to 6 times, maybe a few more if you'd like. And then right when that's done, return to that relaxed, spacious breath. Slow, soft, and light for again 20 seconds. So you find that deep centering and coming back home. And then again at the bottom of your next exhale, we repeat. We hold the breath at the bottom of the exhale. Be present and conscious as you relax into the emptiness. Wait for that mild air hunger feeling. And once you get that impulse, it's time to breathe, meet it with these 3 to 6 or 10 small sips of air. 1 second in, 1 second out. Staying with those really small, short breaths. And after a few of those, again, let go and just breathe. Guiding your breath to find balance, to feel nourishing. And then again, as these 20 seconds pass, at the bottom of your next exhale, hold. Settle into the stillness. Be empty. Relax in the emptiness. Wait for the impulse to breathe. And again, when that mild air hunger feeling sets in, you take in 3 to 6 or more small sips of air. Knowing that's generally where it becomes quite uncomfortable. You want to breathe, but you're just taking these tiny little sips in and out. And after several of those, again, relax and just breathe. That's the rhythm. So a few more times on your own, feeling or counting out those 20 seconds or noticing how many slow, low and light balanced breaths it takes. Maybe it's a little more than 20 seconds for you to feel grounded, relaxed, and ready. Finding that breath hold at the bottom of your exhale. Continue on your own. A few more rounds, staying so present and attuned to your experience. If you'd like to continue this one for another couple minutes, you can pause here and then press play when you're ready. Again, when this feels complete, we allow a few more moments than 20 seconds to let go. To let go of any manipulation of your breath. To just breathe. To perhaps even savor and relish the experience of an uninhibited breath. So that these moments of gradually breathing less, while they can and are intended to be slightly uncomfortable, they're kind of like little bouts of chaos we bring into our system, but without exceeding our current capacity. And then we come back home to just feeling free and calm and centered and grounded. And that's so good for our nervous system. Bringing in that resilience and flexibility and really showing your body, I can do hard things. I can be present in the discomfort. I know my way back home. So again, if that second experience felt quite challenging, like you were teetering on the end of your window of presence, or it was confusing, or anything at all that gives you the signal that this is the practice you need to stay with, then perhaps pausing the presentation here, not overwhelming your system with more techniques, and really giving yourself the space to master step 1 and step 2 before moving forward. And when you feel ready, we'll move on to the next slide. So you may be wondering why these little sips of air after a breath hold. Now this has everything to do with how we are training our body to increase its level of red blood cells. So it's common for the decrease in oxygen saturation in our body to take place not during the breath hold, but soon after it. So to get the most from these exercises, we do the breath hold, but then we minimize breathing for about 10 to 15 seconds ideally following the breath hold by taking these shorter breaths in and out through the nose. And this is really supporting our body, as I said, to increase red blood cells and increase tolerance to carbon dioxide. So the next step, once steps 1 and 2 are comfortable, is to engage in mild to moderate breath hunger while moving, starting with while walking. So this might be something that you try out, listen through once and then stand up and walk around your house to give it a try. And then potentially when you go for a walk each day or every other day, allowing maybe the first 10 minutes of your walk to be this breath holding exercise, and then just enjoy the rest of your walk without manipulating your breath, so that this is a habit that you bring into your walking, while also recognizing you don't need to do this all the time. In fact, that would not be beneficial. This is about the slow acclimatizing to carbon dioxide. Right? So we want to be mindful of our breath chemistry, and that if we are chronically pushing ourselves into acidosis or alkalosis, especially without the bookending it of calming, centering, grounding, that they could be creating more stress in our system that could be causing more problems. So really being mindful that this is for small bouts of practice, and then we need to really just trust and relax into our breath so that our body's getting this flexible experience. So when you're ready, whether you want to walk and listen or imagine that you're walking, we're going to begin by walking and breathing normally. Great place to start. Just what feels like a natural, balanced, nourishing breath. And at the bottom of your next exhale, you're going to pinch your nose closed and continue walking and count your steps as you hold your breath. Knowing the first couple rounds of this, don't push yourself too hard. Just waiting for that mild air hunger sensation. And as soon as the mild air hunger sets in, noting how many steps you took, you're then going to do 15 or 20 seconds of those small sips of air. In and out, small sips of air. Totally okay to stand still at that point, especially as you're getting used to this technique. And after 10 to 20 seconds of these small sips of air, we let go of manipulation and just breathe. Right? So this is pretty much the same technique we were doing on the last slide, but now we're moving. And we might be sustaining the natural breathing for a little bit longer. You might need a little bit more time, perhaps 30 or 45 seconds, to just breathe naturally until you feel really grounded back into a soft, balanced rhythm. And again, when you feel ready, bottom of your exhale, pinch your nose closed, count your steps as you continue walking. No need to walk really fast. Keep it a really natural, enjoyable pace. And again, not pushing too hard in these first couple rounds. So as soon as you feel mild air hunger, you can release your nose, note how many steps you took this time, and engage in those 10 to 20 seconds of small sips of air. 1 second in, 1 second out. Again, knowing that can be the hardest part initially, is keeping those really small sips. Even when you want to take a deep, satiating breath, keep it small. So after 10 to 20 seconds, release and just breathe. Sometimes I find it helpful still at this point as I move into the natural mindful breathing to place my hands on my belly or my low ribs so that especially those first few inhales are still slow and I'm feeling them deep and low belly, low back, low ribs. And I find that actually helps me recover so much quicker. So it's quite helpful. Recalling that a bit of resistance on the inhale can be quite down-regulating. So we can support ourselves to recover with that bit of resistance. And then we continue this practice, somewhere between 6 to 10 times. Knowing if it's your first time, doing it twice or 3 times might be enough. And as you get more familiar, or if it's feeling comfortable, you continue. And perhaps on this next one, you can play with, well, what happens on your next breath hold if you move a little bit past mild air hunger? Like maybe you take 2 more steps past mild air hunger. So you're moving closer to moderate. And then again, those small sips of air 10 to 20 seconds of them, and then back to natural breathing. So that's how you can begin challenging yourself a little bit more in this technique, is noting number of steps that take you to mild air hunger, and then challenging yourself, okay, 2 more steps, 4 more steps, 6 more steps, so that you're gradually moving towards a relatively strong need for air. Knowing that if it really pushes you out of your window of presence, then on the next round, really keep that in mind. Do less. Show your body that you can do it again and you are listening and adapting. Being a little bit more generous or tender with yourself. That it doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be so hard. This is about slow progress. So you're not going to get further by pushing yourself harder in these exercises. This really is about slow and steady. Remaining present and conscious and aware and nurturing. Right? Don't punish yourself here. Really enjoy each part of this technique. So if you haven't been doing this along with my instruction, I'll encourage you to press pause and go give this a try. And there's notes in your module to support you in walking back through this so that you can build it into your daily or weekly routine. And again, if this feels quite challenging, like this was a lot, then this is where you stay or even go back a stage, focusing on doing this just while being still, building up to walking. And when this feels familiar and comfortable, and perhaps you are already engaging in exercise, whether it's jogging or lifting weights or any kind of physical exertion, the next portion of mild air hunger is how we incorporate these techniques into our physical exercise. So a good rule of thumb before engaging in mild to extreme air hunger while exercising is that it is generally encouraged or suggested, strongly suggested, that your Volt score is above 20 seconds before you incorporate these techniques. So what's interesting about these techniques is they are helpful outside of exercise as well. As you see in this first example, the technique we use to support our body in warming up is actually the very same for reducing anxiety. So as you are preparing your body for exercise of any kind, we can limit that feeling of lethargy or discomfort in the body that can sometimes happen when we begin our workout until we get to that point like, okay, now I'm into it, it's feeling good. We can actually get our body prepared much more quickly by engaging in this breath technique. So when you're warming up for exercise, we do an inhale that's around 4 or 5 seconds in. We hold our breath at the top of the inhale for 2 to 4 seconds, and then a long exhale for 6 seconds. Okay, so not getting attached to these numbers, we want to inhale for a comfortable amount of time, hold for a little bit less time than the inhale, and exhale a second or two longer than the inhale. And what we're doing when we engage in this type of warm-up is that we're producing more carbon dioxide in our body. And this is improving the release of oxygen from the blood to the tissues and organs as they're now moving and they need that nourishment. This also increases your VO2 max, which improves your endurance and reduces your risk of injury, as well as having higher carbon dioxide in your blood at this point in time will open your blood vessels and airways, allowing for better blood flow and easier breathing. Right? So lots of benefits to beginning your workout with this breath technique. And ultimately, just for a few minutes. Okay? It can also be while you are moving your body. I sometimes will do really gentle, mindful movement or holding stagnant stretches before my workout and engaging in this technique as I do that as well. Now, once we are working out, this is, in general, we want to find a rhythm where the inhale is shorter than the exhale. And you will notice that this is quite difficult once you have got your heart pumping and your body's working hard. We naturally want to take in a much bigger inhale, and sometimes through the mouth. And what we are challenging ourselves to do during exercise is to maintain nasal breathing and maintain that feeling of release and relaxation as we exhale. So we're receiving what we need on the inhale, and every exhale, there's a moment of healing. And this requires so much presence, which is another beautiful benefit of practicing this technique. That you are in your body, you are noticing what you are feeling, you are not vacating the experience and powering through it or just checking it off the to-do list. You are engaging in this fully present, mind-body awareness. So sometimes I find this can be helpful when I'm engaging in something that's a little bit more rhythmic, like if I'm doing bicycle crunches, for example. I might find that, okay, I'm going to do an inhale for 2 crunches and then an exhale for 6 or for 4 or 5. And so again, you don't have to engage, force yourself to breathe this way your whole workout, but as often as possible, come back to it. And this is going to make a huge difference in your capacity as you exercise and your ability to recover efficiently and make the most out of the nourishment you have in your body. It's going to have a huge impact. And now as we cool down, it's pretty much the opposite of what we do when we warm up. So for the cool down, this generally can be really nice as you just do a slow walk or, again, slow mindful movement, where you take about 10 breaths that just feel natural in that moment, whatever feels good, whatever feels balanced and nourishing. And then at the bottom of your exhale, after 10 seconds or so, you're going to hold your breath for just a short amount of time, 2 to 5 seconds. And then again, back into what feels like a natural, nourishing breath for about 10 seconds. Engaging in the breath holds at the bottom of the exhale for those few seconds. Now, what we're doing in this exercise, well, a few things. So once we've been exercising, our muscles are working hard. Our body is building up a lot of this, what can be metabolic waste, the carbon dioxide from muscles working hard. And when we hold our breath at the bottom of the exhale, we're making sure that we're helping our body balance out our blood chemistry. So we've been breathing out a lot as well during exercise, and this is a way to bring ourselves back into equilibrium. So these gentle pauses at the bottom of the exhale are again helping the carbon dioxide continue to build, and then the slow, mindful inhale and exhale, bringing in the oxygen we need, releasing the carbon dioxide and the waste products, and then the gentle breath hold at the bottom. And again, when we hold at the bottom, we are engaging more of our parasympathetic nervous system, right? This is helping us down regulate. Whereas in the warm-up, we're holding our breath at the top of the inhale because we're also trying to energize our system. We're holding at the top of the inhale, which is the more connected to the sympathetic nervous system. So we're helping ourselves upregulate and get ready. Whereas the cool down, we hold our breath at the bottom of the exhale. Right? So we're helping ourselves get grounded, to slow down. So cool down, breathing in this way for about 3 to 5 minutes. And then resuming to normal breathing from there. Thank you for joining me for this presentation. In our time together today, we moved through some very common breathing misconceptions. The main one being that we actually need to breathe less in order to receive more oxygen and to optimize our system. The key here being consciously breathing less. We're present to our experience and we understand what we are doing. It's also really important to reiterate that throughout this process and everything that we do, to include appreciation and acknowledgement towards your body, that it is working so hard and its intention is survival. Even when we can look at something and get confused by it or angry at it or frustrated, to really recognize that our body is doing the best that it can, and it is amazing how it has adapted and makes the most of what it is fed and can find balance and in imbalance. It's amazing. And when we bring in that acknowledgement and appreciation and love and nurturance towards our body, this actually supports the process of change. It makes our body feel safe, connected with, heard, and seen. And this just allows our practice and our conscious and intentional change to be so much more efficient, working with your body instead of against it. The last piece I want to bring in one more time is the importance of practicing these techniques in a way that feels good for you. I can attest to when you think that this is the one and only practice, or that going hard into it will make it move quicker, it has the opposite effect. Right? We really want to listen to our body, notice the signals that are saying, okay, that's enough, or I'm ready for more, or, let's take a whole week to not look at this and just practice meditation and relaxing breathing and then come back to it. As well as, finding times of the day or the week or the month that this type of practice feels really good. So that this is built into your lifestyle and it's a technique that you really understand and can utilize so that you are slowly retraining your respiratory pattern generator to breathe less naturally. If you have any questions or you'd like me to go deeper into anything, please let me know. Thank you for joining me. Bye for now.